So that was Kojo Oppong Nkrumah. He's joined us to clarify what he was saying and whether this has anything to do with the road discussion, because the sense I get from his submission was that the 13 billion had to do with roads. So he was expecting that the 900 million facility that the World Bank was providing was to go for that. So Kojo, thanks for joining us. Good morning.
Morning, Bernard.
So let's clarify this. Which facility is this, by the way? What facility are we talking about?
This is the second tranche of a $900 million loan that the government of Ghana, then under President Akufo-Addo's administration, negotiated for budgetary support. And a good chunk of it was supposed to go to help us pay obligations to contractors, because we have a lot of contractors who are working on various road projects. And there's a need to ensure that as they work in their certificates coming, there's financing for them. So this loan was arranged. It was $900 million at the time. It was arranged in 2023. We drew down the first tranche in March 2024 for budgetary support. Now, when the government went to cabinet, so first of all, before the end of our tenure, we tried to access the second tranche to pay the obligations, because around October, some of the contractors started, acting a bit interestingly on the road. Some started pulling off the routes, etc. But anytime we tried to lay it in Parliament, the then minority, the NDC, opposed it and said that they would not let us lay it. We understand it was a political season, so it was part of the frustration effort that they put up. When they came to power, they then went to cabinet to get new cabinet approval. And they were clear and honest before cabinet that they were going to use the money, the $360 million. Actually, it was supposed to be 300, but they upped it to $360 million for the second tranche. They were going to use it to pay contractors. However, when they came to Parliament, in the report that the committee submitted, we saw other items for utilization of funds. And that's what I was drawing attention to, that they don't have to deviate from the original intention, because there are a lot of contractors on our roads who are having challenges. Yesterday, I started my day at the Roads Ministry to go see the minister and to try and follow up on the payment of, for example, contractors on some of my roads, Odan to Ofuase, Enyinase to Edubiase. Gideon Boakun was also following Tepa to Boma and its surrounding areas. So we were all following it, only to now find out that they wanted to use the money for climate change interventions for the vulnerable. Then they brought the power sector issues back. Meanwhile, they've come two separate occasions for money for power sector matters. Then they added social safety net and I think poverty reduction. So we were objecting to it that they should not deviate from the purpose. They should stick to the purpose for which this original loan had been arranged. And then secondly, we noticed they were trying to hide the fact that this was a loan. We were describing it broadly as a financing facility. And, there could be various types of financing when it comes to the budget. So again, we impressed on them that because of the challenges with debt transparency and hidden debt, if we are not transparent, this may not even be captured in our annual public debt report. And it will be a hidden debt sitting somewhere only for you to do your debt sustainability analysis, and then it will be classified properly as a debt. So again, we're impressing on them that, listen, let's be candid. This is a loan. It's not a new loan. It's part of the 900, and it's for a specific purpose. So
okay,
stick with the purpose.
Thanks for the background. Now, this 360 million, is it the same facility that the World Bank sent a release yesterday? I think June 27. I just want to read the first paragraph so we know we are talking about the same thing. So the World Bank Board of Executive Directors today approved $360 million from the International Development Association for the second Resilient Recovery Development Policy Financing Operation to support the government of Ghana's efforts to restore macroeconomic stability and reinforce the foundation for more sustainable and resilient economic growth for job creation. And then it goes on to make
it's
a
the same
quote.
one.
Okay, so it's 360 million.
Yes.
Good. Now,
and the second tranche.
Good. From what I read here, it mentions about 4 objectives: restore fiscal sustainability, support financial sector stability and private sector development, improve energy sector financial discipline, and strengthen social and climate resilience. This was what the World Bank's own statement says, from what I have in front of me.
Yes, that's the big program framework. So it's part of a big program. It's a $900 million program. In fact, now the government has increased it after negotiating with the bank to move it to over $1 billion. That's a big program. But when you draw, you have specific purposes that you are using. This particular tranche, this 360, is specifically for the payment of contractors. And you'll find it on page 11 out of the 24-page cabinet memo. Yesterday, we read it back to them on the floor.
Now, so your contention is that what they brought to Parliament is an attempt to deviate from what they said to cabinet.
From what cabinet approved.
What cabinet approved? Yes. So that it's not like they are deviating from what the loan is meant for based on the World Bank's understanding. It's more the cabinet decision. That's your emphasis.
In fact, both are correct. The big program, yes, includes payment of contractors, includes several other things. But specifically, this one, as approved by cabinet, was for payment of contractors 100%. But when they came to cabinet, they were now deviating. And to Parliament, they were now deviating. And that's why we drew their attention. Thankfully, the Deputy Minister for Finance, Honorable Ampim, who was there, considered on the floor that this would be used 100% to pay the contractors. And then he also undertook that when they have done the payments, they will come back to Parliament with a report on which contractors have been paid.
All right. Now, I think you hinted in your submission earlier that the contractors could be very broad, because I'm sure contractors doesn't necessarily mean road contractors. There could be power sector contractors as well, right? So is it your contention that the cabinet decision was specific to road contractors or contractors generally?
So, in fact, in our submission, we even considered that you could even have contractors in the energy sector. But if that is the intendment, then you say that clearly to cabinet, and when you come to Parliament, you also say that contractors, specifically energy sector, road, so and so. When you now go into some of the other issues of poverty reduction and climate resilience, etc., that's why we say you are deviating.
Now, the bigger question, though, is how come the debt is so big? Indeed, the minister you say you went to see yesterday, on June 25, he is quoted as having said that the road sector has a debt overhang of 67 billion, I suppose, cedis, and that they are making arrangement to pay the first 13, which is the figure you mentioned as well. Yes. Why did MPP leave 67 billion cedis in road construction debts?
Well, you would notice that government programs road construction, first of all, based on the demands of people. This morning, I was alerted that you were speaking to people on one of our major corridors between Achimota and all the way to, I think, in Saomo. So the demands of the people would trigger the government program to construct those roads. And then government will program different forms of financing for it. Tax revenue, non-tax revenue, some loans. There are some that you could even decide to bring in a PPP option to come and do a BOT for you. If some of those revenue options are not performing, you will find that by the time the contractor has done the work and issued the certificate, you have a debt and you don't have any of these financing options to pay. I don't think that it will be deliberate on any government's part, even the NDC government's part, that they will give out road contracts and will not pay for it. No, it is a product of the functioning of your revenue handles. You will recall that revenue had its own challenges, for which reason we had to then introduce some taxes, some of which were very unpopular and got us into trouble at the end of the day. But the revenue underperformance generally, vis-a-vis the scale of projects that the people of Ghana are asking for, is part of the reason for which you will find that intermittently you have gaps between the work that has been done and the money in the basket to pay for them. And that's why when we observed that it is possible that these monies were now going to be used for goods and service expenditure, we have to quickly draw the minister's attention.
Well, before I talk to the Deputy Minister of Finance, Mr. Agboja said that your government awarded road projects without regard for availability of funds, unquote. That is pretty serious.
I don't think that is correct. They are in government now, and I am optimistic that very soon they would now tone down on all of these conversations. You award contracts, you program revenues, but the revenues have to perform. The revenue handles have to perform. For example, this year, when the government said they were going to remove some revenue handles, we drew the attention that it will create about 6 billion CD gap in the budget. They told us that they were going to close that gap by reducing the VAT refund retention threshold from 6 to 4%. I'm very sure you recall. Check the numbers. It's not performing. As a result, they've had to come back. That, and then the fact that they are now also losing about 5 cedis for every $1 revenue program for gold, oil, and cocoa. So they've had to come back to try and see how they can get another 6 billion from introducing this 8% levy on fuel, which they have suspended. So as you do your economic program, and particularly your fiscal program, and then you go along, you've committed the contract, but as you go along, you would then observe the revenues as they come in or not. It is when the gap comes, that's when you have these unfunded commitments. I don't think anybody will be deliberate in doing that.
All right. Stay on. Let me talk to Honorable Thomas Nyakwampim, Deputy Finance Minister. Now, Honorable, I did hear you in Parliament respond to what Kojo said, but because you're here, I'm not going to play back what you said. But if you can summarize that, what the position was and whether Kojo was right or you were, it was just an oversight. What's your version of why, in his view, you were attempting to vary a cabinet decision to spend 13 billion cedis to pay contractors, and you wanted to spend it on other matters?
Thank you and good morning. Kojo Mawache, I hope that now to me die. Bernard, Kojo is just trying to do politics on the floor and on this platform, because what we said and what the report of the committee was clear. One, he's trying to align with President Mohammed's decision to use the $360 million to pay contractors and suggest that that was the original intention of the loan. That is not true. The loan is a budget support facility from the World Bank. And budget support does not tie the hands of the government to utilize the proceeds for any specific item. It comes into the pool of revenue for the government, and the government decides what to use the money for. So that is the first thing. It says $300 million in March 2024. The second tranche is what we are assessing that we sent to Parliament. Government took a decision in cabinet that the total amount should be utilized for the payment of arrears. And that is what we communicated to Parliament. If you look at the report that he's talking about, he decided to choose the broad objectives of the facility and then just listed a number of the items listed under the broad objectives. If you look at paragraph 6.5, it says, and I read, the committee observed that the expected outcomes of the program include the following: improved revenue collection, improved financial sector stability, improved private investment and foreign direct investment, a host of them. This was in the original agreement. So that is a broad objective. But the agreement is that whenever you are assessing, the funds will be part of budget support. And budget support does not tie the hands of the government to spend it on any specific item. It is the decision of the government to decide what they want to spend it on.
So as far as you're concerned, the report was explicit that you would spend it on arrears. There was no variation in that.
Yes, I'm going to read that part of the report to you. That is under paragraph 6.2. And it says, I read, it will be recalled that in the 2025 budget, government programmed to spend 13 billion cedis owed to contractors. During the consideration of the referral, the committee noted that the full amount of 350 million from DPO2 will be used to finance part of the amount owed to contractors. This was explicitly stated in the report. So I was so shocked listening to my friend Oppong Nkrumah reading around and suggesting that we communicating to Parliament is suggesting that the amount, the utilization will be varied from the decision of Cabinet. That is not true. And if you have a copy of the report, look at it. It stated in the report that the full amount will be used to pay part of the amount owed to contractors. So all that he's dancing around saying were palpable and truth.
It would be nice for you to forward the report to me. It would be good if after the interview you forward it to me, if it's possible. If
I'll
it's not,
forward it to you.
Good. Second question. And I'll let Kojo respond to this, but if I see the report, to end the matter. Second question, the road minister said 67 billion is the arrears for the road sector alone. 13 out of that still
but
leaves...
That is the arrears, the total arrears, not only to road sector.
Oh, okay.
The 67 billion is total arrears.
Wonderful.
Yes.
So what is the total for road? Do we know?
If I recall, that is a little over 20 billion.
Oh, wow. So when you pay that, and is all this 13 going to road?
No, we didn't say all the 13 is going to road. The 13 billion is the amount we have programmed to pay for arrears in the 2025 budget. We couldn't take the full amount of 65 billion to be programmed in 2025 budget. So we reported to Parliament that for the year 2025, we had programmed to pay down the arrears of 67 billion by 13 billion.
Wonderful. So these arrears are everything from road, energy, and other arrears
that we have programmed to pay in 2025.
Wonderful. Correct. Wonderful.
And let me quickly add that you recall that Dr. Forsen reported to Parliament that we had submitted the 67 billion arrears to the Auditor General to audit. And then after that, we will start the payment. The Auditor General has submitted part of the report to us. Some have been disallowed, some have been cleared. And so we are going to begin, once we get this money, we are going to begin the payments of arrears for those that have been cleared by the Auditor General.
So it's possible when the full work is done, the total arrears will be less than 67 billion?
It will come down, yes.
But the road 20, do we know how much of the 13 will go into roads?
Well, those specifics I don't have readily available, but the amount programmed of 13 billion is going to pay arrears for this year. And let me quickly mention this because we were talking about a statement that the road minister made. Look, when we were doing the budget hearing and the road minister and his team appeared before us, I chaired that committee, so I remember it vividly. It came to light that there are over 800 road projects that have been awarded, ongoing across the length and breadth of this country. And the amount allocated for the road sector was about 2.2 billion. That is the capex for 2025 for the road sector. And so the initial data they brought to us, they had thinly distributed the 2.2 billion to a lot of ongoing road projects. Some even had 100,000 cities. Some had 50,000. Some had 300,000. So the question was that if you pay a contractor on the Akosombo-Jekiti Road who has brought a certificate to the tune of about 3 million cities, and you pay him 100,000, can he go back to continue the road? So we agreed, and Honorable Agboja agreed with me, that they will have to go back and look at this and redistribute the amount. At least, if they can concentrate on a number of roads and complete them, it is better than thinly spreading the 2.2 billion on 800 projects and none will go far. So it is obvious that the indiscretion to award many projects, I mean, at a time that you know that you don't have money to fund them, is what has caused all these things. And so the truth is that all the 800 projects cannot continue at the same time. We need to prioritize. And the 2.2 billion is separate from the 13 billion that I talked about. The 13 billion is specifically for arrears. The 2.2 billion is the capex allocation for the road ministry for 2025. And there is also some allocation for road fund. That is mainly for road maintenance. And so that is the reality. We need to cut our coat according to our size. That is why in the 2025 budget, government has decided that before you commit government to award any contract, you need to come back to the finance ministry for us to ascertain that you have the money to fund the project. So today we are giving commitment authorization. We will look at your budget for the year or the medium term. If you say that the Asikuma and Numbosu Road will cost 8 million cedis, you want to do it in 3 years, and then another road will cost this. So we want to look at what you have programmed for the whole year and look at your budget and see if it can be contained before we allow you to go and contract. If we don't do that and they continue to award contracts at will, we will come back to the same mess that we inherited. So President Mahama is clear.
Yes, clear. Do you think
it's clear that we need to reverse this trend?
You don't speak for the road minister, but do you think it will be useful to renegotiate these 800 road projects because the amount is too little?
They suggested that. They suggested that they will renegotiate, see those that they can terminate, see those that can be. I mean, so they are working around all these things. I mean, if you call Honorable Abuja, I'm sure he will be able to give you details.
Fair enough.
Because 800 projects cannot continue to sit on our books because it will lead to judgment debts. It will, I mean, a whole lot of mess that we have inherited.
Fair enough.
So if Oppong Nkrumah, Honorable Oppong Nkrumah, is saying the reality will come back to her because revenue is not performing, that is not the truth. The reality is that they awarded contracts that they knew they did not have money for. And that is what is happening. Look, in next 2 weeks, my boss will come to Parliament to present the mid-year budget review. And you see that revenue has performed more than what we programmed. We have raked in more revenue than what we planned, what we anticipated we were going to get by the end of June 2025.
Just two quick...
So revenue is performing.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we still need to do more to get more revenue that we can finance a lot of
Two quick points. In my interview with him, he said that this 360 million from the World Bank was originally 300 million, which they had wanted to pass in October last year, but your side blocked it, which is why it's delayed. And therefore, you guys managed to add 60. But that if that had gone through in 2024, some of the debt would have gone. This is what he said. I don't know if you have a comment on that.
That is not true. You see, this World Bank facility is tied to some reforms that government has agreed with the World Bank that we will do. And these reforms are very wide. There are some that are EPA related. I mean, there are some that are social protection related and all that. So before you assess this cheap facility, we have agreed with government, with a bank, that we will do A, B, C, D. And so the World Bank Board looks at your performance in the agreed indicators that you have agreed to perform before they approve it. And so on Friday, 27th of June, the board reviewed it and then approved the second tranche. Ask Oppong Nkrumah whether the time that they were talking about, the World Bank Board had approved the second tranche. It is not, they had not approved it. You understand? We took a decision to slow them down on borrowings because we warned them way ahead that the rate at which they were borrowing, they will crash the economy. We will not be able to pay. We will default. We will go into debt restructuring. We said these things. I remember Dr. Atufolsen did some program at UPSA, a lecture, and he predicted all these things. They did not listen. They continued borrowing until such a point that they were forced to restructure our debt. And so the minority then took a decision that we needed to slow them down on the rate at which they were borrowing. Bernard, you were here. You are familiar with these issues. So that is what happened. Now, on the issue of the additional 60 million, look, when this government took over, we started implementing some of the reforms to the admiration of everybody, Ghanaians, the IMF, the World Bank, everybody. And one thing that we have said that we're going to do was private sector participation in the distribution of energy, electricity. The World Bank said, okay, if you want to embark on this reform, then we'll give you additional 160 million so that you can use it to finance your budget. And so the reform has been put in stages. The bank says, okay, the first stage, if you are able to secure cabinet approval, then you can access additional 60 million. If you are able to complete the process, you can access another 100 million. That is how come this time cabinet has approved a decision to have private sector participation in the energy distribution. And so the additional 60 million is available for government to assess.
Okay.
That is how come the amount has increased from 300 to 360 million. And then the final one is going to be about 400 million or so. If we are able to get through all the reforms, the DPO3 will be will also mature around October, November this year.
Good.
And so by October, November this year, if government is able to do all the reforms that we have committed to do, we can access another 400 million. The decision of President Mahamad's cabinet is that that 400 million will also go into the payment of contractors. And when I say contractors, not just road contractors, all contractors.
So it means that the 67 billion arrears, the plan for it from financing perspective is the facility from the World Bank, basically.
No, not only the facility.
Not only that.
We are also financing part from internal revenue generation source. And so it is just that this facility is available and we say we are committing all. In fact, if you put the 360 and the 400 million that we are expecting around October, November, it comes to about 8 billion cedis. We have programmed to spend 13 billion. So the extra 5 billion will be financed from our internal source.
Finally, because today we are discussing roads, I know you're not the road minister, the 20 billion old road contractors, when do you think it would be paid?
Look, all these will be programmed in our budget. Now, the Auditor General and the top accounting firms that did the auditing of the arrears have already brought some report that indicates that some of the amounts are being disallowed. So in the mid-year budget review on the 17th or so, if I get the date right, Dr. Folsom will report on that and will indicate what the audited arrears stock is. And then he will also indicate the plan to clear the arrears. Already we made provision for 13 billion, which we are religiously pursuing to clear this year. In next year's budget, we will program another amount. And that is why we are managing the finances so well that we don't have arrears build up. That is why we are giving commitment authorization and make sure that you don't spend beyond what, we don't spend above what has been budgeted for the year. Because if we go the way they did, we will be clearing the arrears and we'll be building more arrears. That is not how to manage an economy. If Ghana was Oppong Nkrumah's company, do you think he would have managed Ghana the way they did? He was speaking for government, so he's very familiar with all these issues. That's why I knew that all that he was doing on the floor was politics. He just, and today, you know, Oppong Nkrumah is a very smart guy. He's trying to suggest to Ghanaians that the decision to use the 360 million to pay contractors was taken by them many years ago. How can you say this? When Oppong Nkrumah knows that it is budget support and it is money that is not tied to anything and it is the government's decision to decide what to use it for. He should tell us the $300 million they took, what they used it for.
Okay, he's here to respond.
Yes, he should respond. It was not tied to any specific thing. And they did not say that they were using it to pay contractors. Then, if they said it, he should prove it. They never said that. So they used it for different things. In fact, you cannot even track specifically what it was used for because the money was put into the pool and then they disbursed it. So they cannot tell line by line what they use. We have come and we have stated clearly that we are using the full amount to pay contractors. They didn't do that. So he shouldn't try to take part of President Mahamed.
Kojo, your colleague says don't try and take part of Mahamad's glory. And if Ghana was your company, we run it the way your government ran it. What is your comment?
I hope he stays on the line for a while. First of all, he is the one peddling palpable falsehoods when he says that they did not block the laying of loan agreements getting to the end of our tenure. You followed it, your reporters followed it, Ghanaians followed it. In fact, sometimes it even almost degenerated into fisticuffs because there were quite a number of loan agreements that we sought to lay getting to the end of our tenure that they blocked it Today, he's turning around trying to pretend that he doesn't recall any of those things. Number two, he also, in one breath, wants to suggest that I said expressly, or I suggested, that the intendment of the 360 by us was for paying of contractors. I never said that. I said that they went to cabinet, and I read page 11 of their cabinet memo. They went to cabinet, and then they got approval that they were going to use 100% of the money to pay contractors. When they came to Parliament, Bernard, on the report that they brought, which he says he will forward to you, I've also got a copy here. There was a part of the report that dealt with the general uses of the original 900. I think you even alluded to it in your earlier reading. That one dealt with the general uses. Then when it came to what they were going to use this for, under 6.3, they called it importance of the facility. They said, and I want to read to you, the committee noted that the 360 million facility is not dedicated to any specific project in the 2025 budget. The Deputy Minister of Finance, hello?
Yes, you are on. You are on.
Yes,
you are on.
The Deputy Minister of Finance explained that the facility is part of general budget support and will be applied to finance critical aspects of the 2025 budget. They were still going on being vague. And then they now followed with this long list of the general provisions. It is then that we drew the attention to the fact that you went to your own cabinet. Yes, it was President Mahama who said that for this specific tranche, he wanted to use it to pay contractors. You went to cabinet and got that approval. So don't come to Parliament and instead of being specific, in the past, Bernard, sometimes you even see specific road projects listed for the utilization of funds. In this case, they chose to be hazy about it and not be specific about it. Now, he talks about revenue, performance, being above par. My brother, don't deceive yourself. We've been in that space before. This revenue performance that you are saying is above par. We will be happy to know if it includes the almost 11 billion that you swept from a controller and all of those accounts to join or back to Central Treasury that you are counting as part of your revenue. Because you and I have been in this game for a while. You know that revenue has its very, very significant difficulties. And that is why at the end of the day, sometimes you have difficulty in meeting some of your expenditure obligations. If you choose to play the ostrich with it, we are here. As the time goes along, we will see the reasons for which you are or you are not able to fund some of the expenditure commitments that you have made. But be that as it may, our joy is that at the end of the day, they have admitted that they are going to use it as they got cabinet approval for to pay contractors. And as our leader, Onagbafenyo King, requested and which he committed to on the floor, I heard him quite clearly, when they are done, they will come back to Parliament in their subsequent reports and be able to provide all of that detail.
Can you respond to two specific things he said, where he said you cannot tell us what you used the first tranche to specifically do because you added it to a general pool of money, and number two, that under your government, 800 road projects were committed to, for which only 2.2 billion in capex was allocated, spreading the results so thin that some projects had even 50,000 CD mobilization.
So first of all, our 300, we were clear that it was for general budget support. If you look at the cabinet memo and you look at what we came to Parliament with, there was no deviation between the two. We said it was clearly for general budget support as a complement to what the IMF was doing for us. They are the ones who went to cabinet to say that they were going to be specific. In fact, when they went to cabinet, they did not list these items, climate resilience, social safety net, etc., under that particular paragraph on page 11. They didn't. But here, when they came to Parliament, they chose not to be specific on it, but rather to list those ones. So that's why we drew their caution to it. Ours, we were quite clear that it was general budget support. If he chooses to spend it, that therefore we dump it in the budget and we can't show line by line. But that's exactly what budget support is for. You were the one who did politicking with these issues. I was hoping we were not going to go into that dimension, but since you want to go, you did a lot of politicking with it. Today, now that you are in power and you have gone for specifics, that you are going to use this loan to pay contractors, when you came to Parliament, you weren't clear on it, and that's why we had to draw.
But did you intend to use the second tranche to pay contractors?
Well, I don't have before me the memo on the utilization of the second tranche, but they were those who went specifically that they were going to use it to pay contractors. By the way, the contractors that they said the arrears was 60-something billion, I think in his submission, he has considered that the figure is going to be a bit lower than that. And this is why we caution them at budget time that even if somebody is telling you we owe, you don't adjust the national accounts for figures you haven't audited. About 800 contracts that had been awarded on the road projects. These contracts were not, with the greatest of respect, roads to nowhere. These were contracts for roads that were in demand. This morning, as you are talking to people, Santor and all of these places, these are roads that the people you went to campaign to tell them you will build those roads for. These are roads that they are waiting for you to deliver. It is for that same purpose that the MPP administration gave out those contracts. It is for the same purpose that the MPP administration programmed revenues, programmed debt as part of efforts to pay. If revenues were having challenges at the point, for example, when you came to power, you said you were going to raise revenue from 13 to 18% without adding new taxes or renaming old taxes. You've reneged on that. And today you are introducing new taxes left, right, center on insurance, on fuel, etc. It's because the revenue holes are big. So don't pretend that you are overperforming on revenue to come back to haunt you.
Well, Kojo,
be candid with it.
Yeah. Finally, he's actually sent me
the revenue so that you can close it.
Before we go, he sent me the report. It's 10 pages, and to be fair, 6.2. It mentioned that the committee also noted that the third tranche DPO3 yet to come on board will also be used to finance part of the 2025 programmed arrears. It also says that in the 2025 budget, government program to spend 13 billion owed to contractors. During the consideration of the referral, the committee noted that the full amount of the 360 million from DPO2 will be used to finance part of the amount owed to contractors. So he's basically saying you knew this was in the report, but you decided to focus on the 6.1 where they were talking about the rationale for the facility.
No. That's not what we focus. Go further. Go to 6.3. Importance of the facility. That's what I was reading to. That is where you now come and speak about the specifics. What are you going to use this one for? Then there they went to say that they were going to use it, that is not dedicated to any specific project. And that they were going to use it as general budget support. And so if you follow Afenyo Martin's debate on the floor, for example, he was asking them that you need to be specific. And then if you follow that with the general benefits, in fact, the word we used to them yesterday was that they were obfuscating. We've been in this enterprise before. What he accused us of doing, of dumping it in the budget and then appropriating it from the budget without being specific, that is what we're drawing the attention to kill, that you need to be specific. Later, his answer was that he can't list the contractors they are going to pay. We would indulge them on that one. But you recall that in the past, sometimes even specific road projects will be named, that this facility is going for specific road projects. Now what they are going to do is that they are going to dump it in a big bowl of what they call arrears. Every government execution in this country, if it is not paid for at the time that it is accounted for, becomes arrears. Arrears could be it could be goods and services expenditure arrears. It could be capex arrears. It could be from different sectors. And that's what we are drawing the attention to, that they needed that specificity.
Okay.
So when they come and follow that with these general provisions, that's when we're saying that they shouldn't divert.
All right.
Thankfully, he considered that they would do it. So, if he comes back this morning to say that, we are doing politics, they were the ones who were doing politics on the floor.
All right.
And finally, they were able to do the right thing.
I wonder whether there's a direct road between Esuojaman and Ofuase. It would be good to see the state of that road, because both of you, I'm sure, because he also, in my answer to him, kept mentioning roads in his constituency, which I suspect he wants done. And you also kept mentioning roads. By the way, how far apart are your two constituencies? Because you are both in the eastern region, I guess. Is it a walkable distance?
Oh, no. He is at Akusumu. He doesn't give me a treat when I go to his constituency for committee meetings. But I am on the western side of the...
Okay, so it's quite a journey.
It is.
So both of you are still a bit apart, even on the issue. So I'll thank you for talking to us. Kojo Oppong Nkrumah, who is MP for Ofuase Arebi, former Minister of Information and also former Works and Housing Minister. MP for Esuojaman is the Deputy Finance Minister. I'll give him the last word as he goes. Minister, thank you for staying on. Just any closing thoughts?
Thank you, Bernard. I'm happy that in the second submission of Oppong Nkrumah, he has drifted away from trying to share in the good news of going to pay contractors. Because in his earlier submission, he suggested that was the original intention of the facility that the 900 will be used to pay for the. No, that wasn't it. You also read the report, and clearly you can see from the report that it was clear. In fact, the importance of the facility that he stated and read. It says the committee noted that the 360 million facility is not dedicated to any specific project. And that is the description of budget support. Budgetary support is not dedicated to any particular project. But we went further to say that even though this facility is not tied to any particular project, it is the decision of government to use the full amount to pay arrears. So this was very clear. So I don't know why you read only one part of the report and refuse to read the most important part that is specific about the utilization of the proceeds. So that is what I'm saying, that the Oppong Nkrumah I know is deliberately throwing dust into the eyes of
fair enough. So to conclude, you said that the 13.
To conclude, he made.
I want us. I want us to go forward.
He mentioned that the revenue that I said is performing. He hopes that the swept fund is not part of it. Look, read our PFMA. We are operating a single treasury account. So by 31st December, if there are any money in subnational accounts that have not been utilized, we must bring all of them back into the consolidated fund. That is, the single treasury account process. And so, because we need to appropriate funds to MDAs to spend. So if for any reason they have excess money and it sits in their accounts and we don't sweep, we will add more money and they will spend outside the budgeted amount. And so we swept the funds. Look, we have restored a number of them so that they can spend within appropriation. This swept funds is not part of the revenue that I'm saying is performing. It is not part of it. The amount we indicated in the budget that we will raise from all sources by immediate next 2 weeks, you will see that we have performed more than that. And that is revenues for 2025. So that is what we are doing. And look, he has admitted that they were reckless in awarding contracts everywhere and all that, and saying that we'll see the reality.
I'm not sure he will say he admitted.
He did. He did. Don't try to divert. So you see, we are saying that we cannot continue on that path. So whenever we agree on an amount for an MDA, try to spend within that ceiling. Otherwise, we will go back to defaulting on our debt and we will have to restructure again. Never again should this happen to Ghana. We must prudently manage our finances.
Wait, thank you. We'll be waiting for the 16th July or 17th July midterm budget, and hopefully we can talk again around that period. Thank you so much, Honorable Thomas Nyakwampim, Deputy Minister for Finance, MP for Esujaman. Also earlier on, Kojo Oppong Nkrumah, MP for Ofansi Arabi. So